Episode 1342 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.com.
The FDH Lounge. You'll want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to FDH Lounge mini episode 1342. This is FDH managing partner Rick Morris here, and I have two fellow original dignitaries with me today, and this has gotten to be an annual rite of passage on the show here as the NFL draft comes up to talk about NFL draft with our senior editor Jason Jones, who is our point man for NFL draft coverage, and particularly in what you will be seeing in Pro Football Draftology 2021, available on the main page at fantasydrafthelp.com April 26th and thereafter. As well as Chris Galloway, fellow FDH Lounge original dignitary. The three of us have had this nice little panel going here, previewing the draft and looking back for many, many years now. I don't remember the exact year that we started with this format of the three of us, but it is always one of the highlights of the year of our coverage. Pleasure to get them both on. Chris Galloway, I've had you on to be talking football a decent amount in the last year, as has been the norm the last couple of years. Good to get you back on, buddy.
Thrilled to be here, Rick. Another year, another draft. And of course, this year's draft is right here in our hometown of Cleveland, Ohio.
It is indeed. I was downtown. I was actually down getting my vax at the Wolstein Center, and my dad drove me down there. He was kind enough so that I wouldn't have to park, and kind enough to drive down afterwards. I got to get a picture of the stage. I got out, took a picture of some of the helmets that were down there. And to the question that you asked me, Chris, no, I didn't have the presence of mind to urinate on a Steeler helmet. I only wish I had. It might have horrified some of the younger kids in the area. And I might be doing this segment from somewhere in police custody right now. But, that was...
I think before this thing is over, someone's going to do it.
Well, you know what? Somebody's going to call me on it if I say this, but I have the temptation to say that I want to go post bail. So that is something that... I would be very interested to see if anybody does that or not. Also have on the line here good friend, fellow FDH Lounge original dignitary and FDH senior editor Jason Jones. Jason, good to have you back in, buddy.
Oh, it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
It's always great to get on here with you two guys, and there is a lot to look forward to in the draft this year. As Chris said, it is in Cleveland, Ohio. And albeit, again, this is something, I'll just get it out of the way. I'm more than a little bit butthurt that they're bringing the watered-down pandemic version of it here. They're going to claim that everything is normal. It's not going to be. We should have six figures worth of people thronging the streets for the draft the first couple of nights there. We're not going to have that. We're not going to have what we would have if they brought it here in a couple of years. But the NFL's got an NFL. Mayor Frank Jackson's got a Mayor Frank Jackson. And so here we are. It's going to be here. You're welcome, Cleveland, as I guess everybody's attitude from the NFL. But it is, I do have to say this, regardless of what the pandemic circumstances are going to be, a very, very good draft class top to bottom. And this is a thing where, again, from our draft guide, the position rating here, I always handle the position rating every year. I will tell you this, because it's a grade out of 7 here. No positions rated horrible, none rated poor, none rated below average. So we start at average. Offensive guard, defensive tackle, inside linebacker, good. Running back, defensive end, safety, very good. Outside linebacker, cornerback, great. Quarterback, wide receiver, offensive tackle. Now, as far as the panelists here, your mileage may vary on how much my fellow panelists agree with me on that, but I'll start with you, Chris. Thoughts on a draft that it seems like top to bottom is going to be very, very good and maybe looked upon as one of the better, deeper draft classes in many years.
As always, that comes with an asterisk, right? I mean, we never know until a few years later. But I agree with you in assessing the overall talent quality of this class, top to bottom. It is a very deep draft. And I know some years we just, we look at it and go, boy, it's not. But this year, I really do feel when I look at all these positions from top to bottom, it's a very deep draft, and I will tell you, just as an aside, now that the quality of players coming into the league, I think is probably an all-time high in terms of their development at the collegiate level. And that starts obviously all the way down at Pop Warner anymore in these days, but I think that, look for the NFL to start talking sometime in probably 6 to 8 years. I think we're going to see an expansion of the league with additional teams coming in because there is enough talent now available to rosters and even starting quarterback caliber talent to be able to expand the league. And I think they will start working on that, and something that probably would, officially take place in probably about a decade. But look for a few more teams because of this level of talent.
You know what? I hadn't thought about that, but I agree with you. And my guess is, with the way that the NFL is about the almighty buck, you could probably cut that in about half. If we're not seriously talking about expansion in 5 years, based on what you just said, I'll be shocked. And again, it will be interesting to see what cities will be jockeying for position. A lot of the usual suspects are off the table. 2 teams in LA, a team in Las Vegas, but the NFL is very good at ginning up opportunities wherever. So there will surely be candidates sitting there waiting to go once we are looking at the next round of expansion. And this is a thing where I know, Jason, and turning to you, and you, of course, being our lead person, our point person at fantasydrafthelp.com, for the draft as far as going position by position, doing the ratings, doing the big board. This is a thing where I know you had to be somewhat taken aback as well in going through this at the fact that, again, are we saying every position is all-star depth? We are not. But usually you got at least 1 or 2 that are kind of sucking hindquarter. I mean, a lot of years inside linebacker might be below average just because it's not as great of a pool year to year in college football, but the fact that I've got them rated at least as being an average crop, again, in my estimation, nothing worse than average at any position in the draft this year. And it's a chance for this to be a really good crop top to bottom. And potentially, maybe you could even put the word historic if everything pans out.
Yeah. And I'm going to get to that in just a second.
Okay.
Real quick, just wanted to mention for everybody in Cleveland that's going to enjoy the draft. After death and after sickness, my biggest frustration from this pandemic is the result of what you described with this draft.
I know.
Because I was all in. I saved money. I was going to fly me and my 9-year-old out.
You were going to stay with me. You were going to stay with me. I was looking forward to it, Jason. I'm heartbroken. I'm angry. I'm legitimately angry I won't get to see you guys because they didn't save this for a better year. I'm angry.
Yeah, because really the hope was I wanted him to see Cleveland for the first time, hopping with all the festivities. And then, quite frankly, I was actually going to try to get us credentials and actually, rub elbows and talk to people. But if there's, half the guys we expect to be there aren't even going to be there. And the whole thing just feels so lacking. So, yeah, I'm a little frustrated about that. I was all in, and it wasn't until about 2 months ago I said, I can't do it. So, anyway, that's my piece on the draft in Cleveland. But if, we have a real one later down the road, that's still on the table.
I hope.
But, yeah, as far as the depth of the positions, it's very intriguing because none of them are bad, as you alluded to. If no matter what the position is, if you are a fan of a team and you need that one position, it can be had because everything is solid through the first 75 to 100 picks. Now, in some areas, maybe it's just how good Kyle Pitts looks, but I feel like after the 3rd or 4th tight end, the bottom falls out.
Yeah.
Safety, after the first few, the bottom falls out. But if you need somebody, and that's the one somebody you need, I don't care who the team is, I don't care where you're picking, chances are you can fill that hole in this draft.
Yes, you're right about that. And by the way, I'm glad you reminded me. I forgot to read it off that tight end I had rated as being good depth in the draft here because, like you said, Pitts could be an all-timer, but then beyond him it gets a little bit thinner, although there are some other prospects there as well.
There's some nice ones, though.
Yeah, there's some other players that definitely could fill out and could lead to what has been a really improving crop of tight ends in the NFL the last couple of years. Of course, the marquee position any year at the draft, you're expected in any show like this to talk about it early, would be quarterback. And of course, as everybody is known, for a minimum of 24 months now, Trevor Lawrence will be going first in the draft because the Jets failed to tank properly. He won't be going to the Jets. He'll be going to the Jacksonville Jaguars and to Urban Meyer, who is, for the first time in his life, having to worry about managing a salary cap. He was uninhibited in that way in Columbus, some might say, but he's got to watch where the dollars go this time around. And you've got him going there, and then it's really just a complicated situation from that point on as far as how things go. I would have thought, like most people, after the national championship semifinals, I would have thought that Justin Fields would have been a lock at number 2. What more does this guy have to do? Look at the throws that this guy can make with beat up ribs. Somehow or another, he's tumbling down the draft boards at this point in time because Zach Wilson has been the world champion of silly season this year. Give him the belt. Zach Wilson has been the champion of this offseason. He'll go number 2 to the Jets almost certainly. Trey Lance at North Dakota State is hoping, obviously, that people haven't watched the last couple of years of Carson Wentz. So he is poised to go pretty high there. Mac Jones of Alabama, who, again, doesn't have an overwhelming arm, was propped up by incredible talent, skill position talent, historic talent at Alabama, might go number 3 to San Francisco, which John Lynch is not as smart as I think he is if that happens. But it's a complicated picture here at quarterback once you get past 1 or 2, Chris. And it's a thing where, again, this is a class that could be really, really good at quarterback. And based on the expectations of recent years, Justin Herbert and our guy, Joe Burrow, the honorary Bobcat, so these guys will be expected to come in and contribute right away.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to. I mean, unless you're picking Trey Lance,
right.
Those top 5 guys, Trey Lance is a guy I think depending on the team, you're gonna want to sit him for a year. A redshirt sophomore out of North Dakota State. He played 1 game last season. He just hasn't played enough football from a measurables, physical, and apparently, intelligence wise, he looks like he's, the second coming of Patrick Mahomes. But again, that's all ceiling speculation on that kid. And I think that if you're a GM and you're gambling your career on that, we know that in the last decade, first round quarterbacks hit at about the number has actually greatly improved in recent years to about 40%. So that means that these 5 top guys, 2 of them are going to work and 3 aren't. And I mean, that's just the numbers tell us that. Now, maybe this year 3 out of the 5 do. But, look at the few years ago, the Baker Mayfield draft. Baker's looking like he's coming along. Obviously, Josh Allen has done what many of us didn't think he could do, which is somehow get accurate at the pro level.
Right.
And Lamar Jackson is, I know he was an MVP. I still don't believe in Lamar Jackson long term in this league. But kudos to the Ravens for being willing to completely design their offense around him.
Right.
To your point, I would ask you, at any point during this season, did anybody on this on the show today, when they watched Mac Jones this year, say, man, that's a top 10 guy right there. He's a top 10 NFL draft pick. I know I didn't. And to that end, I refuse to believe that the 49ers gave up so much to move up to number 3 and take Mac Jones. I just don't believe it. I do not believe it. I have to think that they're taking Justin Fields in that pick. I know the media is convinced themselves that it's Mac Jones. I just don't see it.
Well, Chris,
it just does not fit in my brain. It does not. It doesn't fit.
I mean, and here's the thing, Chris, and you might think this is a little unfair because I know you're a Jimmy G guy, but I mean, you got Jimmy G. Do you want to trade up that much for maybe another Jimmy G? Because I don't see the ceiling on Mac Jones being that great either.
No, I mean, other than maybe a little more durable.
Yeah.
Size-wise, he's a little more stout. You're right. He's Jimmy G in terms of ceiling.
Okay.
And Jimmy G has been fine if he can stay healthy and on the field.
Sure.
Right? But obviously San Francisco has said, sorry, man, we don't believe in your ability to stay healthy and stay on the field for us. And so we're going to move on. So, in speaking of Baker Mayfield, that's who Zach Wilson reminds me of, a more athletic version of Baker Mayfield.
And a better arm, to be fair. A better arm on the deep throws.
I don't know. I mean, Baker's got an arm. So
Wilson's got a pretty elite one, though. Wilson's supposed to be pretty elite on that. I don't know what his accuracy is going to be necessarily, but he can put it there better than most.
When I watch him, that's who he reminds. He just reminds me of 2 inches taller and a little more athletic than Baker.
Okay,
that's just who he reminds me of. So I think he can find a great deal of success in the league. Zach Wilson. Of course, the only thing there is he's going to the Jets.
Well, yeah.
And so much like Sam Darnold, and our Browns used to be,
yep.
Right? They're a dysfunctional, lousy organization. Have they got it right now in terms of their GM and their coach? They've got a forced marriage there as well.
Yeah.
So, cross your fingers for Zach Wilson. But that organization can turn it around the way the Cleveland Browns have. But I got to think it's Justin Fields to San Francisco in that third pick. And then you're going to see some movement, and that may end up being, the saving situation for a guy like Mac Jones. Because he may now end up going as the 5th quarterback to be drafted, which is he should be.
Yeah.
And he may go to a much better organization, right?
Right.
Like the Patriots or whatever, and give him a much better opportunity to succeed as a quarterback in this league versus going to a lousy, dysfunctional organization like, say, the Jaguars.
Well, yeah.
And no, I don't believe in Urban Meyer. Sorry. No, not believing that this is going to be a fun little thing for a few years, and suddenly he's going to have a headache and have to retire.
Well, and
I don't believe in him. So that's my take on the quarterback situation. I think there's some guys here that can play. And it's, like many years, it's gonna be who picks them.
Yeah.
And do they develop them? Like a guy like Kyle Trask, I could see, a Pittsburgh taking him in the 4th round.
Sure.
3rd round. And trying to develop him.
Yeah. He's an interesting developmental guy. A lot to unpack there. 2 things, and then I want to redirect before I direct it to Jason. I want to follow up on something with you. But as far as it goes with the Jaguars, why Urban Meyer came back, and I didn't believe that he would until the rumors got very serious. The man needed to have holes drilled in his skull because of the pressure in it from, a cyst or whatever it is. I mean, why would you want to go through that again? You're making big bank from Fox Sports. Dumb move on his part, probably driven by ego. I agree that he'll probably live to regret it one way or another. The Jets thing, I like the coach. I don't like the GM. Like you said, shotgun marriage. They ruined Sam Darnold, who I thought was the best quarterback in that draft. And I remain unconvinced that in a sliding doors world, he wouldn't have been the best quarterback in that draft. So we'll see. I wanted him to the Browns at number 1, and I remain unconvinced that the Browns couldn't have done what they did last year with Sam Darnold. Bird in the hand. I'm glad to have Baker the way he's developing, but I don't back off what my thoughts were at the time. What I want to ask you, Chris, and then I'll put this to Jason before I ask Jason about quarterbacks overall, is the thing with Mac Jones. Did he benefit from? Because, again, as stupid as it is, like when you're doing a talk show, then it's okay for us to find a narrative or whatever. But when NFL teams find narratives and NFL media and whatever, that to me is unforgivable because you're supposed to be going off of just things more scientific than that. I saw a narrative developing around Mac Jones based on what our guy, the honorary Bobcat, Joe Burrow, did the previous year, the guy who got me to buy the 740 t-shirt after last year's draft. And the whole thing of like, oh my God, he's finding another level like Joe Burrow did. And that's not what I saw. I mean, he had a heck of a year. But it's one thing to see somebody who's a great college quarterback and who, yes, has boosted his draft stock. But then, OMG, next Joe Burrow. I thought that was out of place, Chris.
I don't. I agree. I mean, it's a narrative, and it fits, right? National champion, great team around them. Similar size. I mean, Burrow's far more athletic than Mac Jones.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I think you're right. It's I agree with you. Mac Jones. I mean, look at the running backs he got to hand the ball off to. Look at his offensive line. Look at the two of his wide receivers are going to go in the top 10.
Right.
Well, Devontae Smith may last to like 12 or 13, but whatever. They're basically two top 10. Well, somebody's going to do it.
Yeah.
Two top 10, if you will, wide receivers potentially. I agree with you. He did elevate his game. He looked good, but I watch those games and I say, how much of this is just? I mean, look, Mac Jones never went in any game he started. He never went into halftime trailing.
Right.
I mean, that's not learning how to struggle and win and overcome.
Right.
At all. Right. I mean, it's just So I'm not a fan. I get very nervous with quarterbacks that I look at and see skill level that appears relatively slightly above average, and everything around them is a literal Lamborghini, and you think, that guy's, boy, he's an all-star. I'm with you on that point. Well, and I think the narrative, the analogy to Burrow is just, it's convenient and lazy.
Yes, it is.
SEC all-star teams, national champion, next level, 1 year, breakout season, he's going to be great. I don't see it.
Right. I agree with that. And then also, too, the only thing that could help him somewhat if he goes 3 is that the Niners, and I mean this in a complimentary way, are a fraudulent number 3 pick in the draft. They had the Super Bowl hangover. They had a whole boatload of injuries. All things being equal, they're a playoff contender going into next year as it is. Pick up more or less where they left off previously. So, I mean, he's going to what is a better team than the number 3 team in the draft would generally be. And I know they traded up to that spot, but I mean, even where they were picking higher than they should have been picking based on the talent level on the team. But I don't think the talent around him alone is going to save that pick. Jason, before we get to the thing of quarterbacks,
that's right.
Yeah. And before we get to quarterbacks overall with you, Jason, I want to ask you, did Mac Jones benefit in terms of narrative? Do you agree with me and Chris from the rise of honorary Bobcat Joe Burrow, what he did the previous year here, and causing all these false comparisons that have benefited Mac Jones?
Okay. The Bobcat thing's not going away, right?
No, it's not.
The Joe Burrow, Bobcat. Okay. I can handle it. I didn't know that going in. Okay. So, like you guys, taking a look around the national landscape, anytime I hear Mac Jones' name, I go, all right, let's just see how we're going to pump this nonsense up. Because I might be a little bit more on one side of this, even than you guys are. When I watch Mac Jones, I see a quarterback, and I don't want to say he's a system guy, but I do think the right system will dramatically help. And if that system has a priority on, let's say, football IQ over football measurables, that can be helpful. But I don't see it at all. I think if you take Mac Jones and you put him on North Dakota State, right?
Right.
Or you put him on or Florida, right?
Right.
Draft. I think he's someone we don't even look at right now. I don't even think he makes the top 200. But because it's Alabama, because it looked good, sort of, I think he is going to go in the first round. I just don't have him going anywhere close top 10. And I don't mean to say that for shock value. I legitimately think that he would fall regardless. And it just so happens that New England's going to be sitting there at 15. And I think Belichick in particular might have a moment's pause there and seriously consider it because what was Tom Brady when he came in? Apparently he was a smart kid, didn't look that great physically, but he fit what Belichick wanted to do. And I think they can do that, but I honestly think if he's not going in the top 10, I'm with Chris. The San Francisco thing is smoke and mirrors. There's no way on earth you give up that level of asset to move up and take a guy who looks meh at best, right?
Right.
So he's probably going in the middle teams, which puts New England in play. If New England says no, I would not be shocked if he has an Aaron Rodgers-like dissension, because I really think he looks that unimpressive. And if you take away the 2 or 3 receivers he's got, with the couple tight ends he's had, the offensive line, and the running back, I dare anyone to tell me what is so spectacular about Mac Jones.
Totally agree. Totally agree. I mean, and the fact that his rise, I mean, quarterback is always the signature position of silly season. But I get the Wilson thing in a way. As contemptuous as I am of putting that much emphasis on workouts, I get it to a degree. And again, I think Josh Allen, if we're talking comparisons, him coming in from a mid-major in the West and making it work at the pro level probably benefits as well in terms of comparisons there. There was a time, you mentioned Trask, there was a time when it seemed like he might have been going pretty high, but that has not materialized the way that it's going. You have Lance, the small school guy. I know you feel the same as me, Jason, that Fields probably should be the number 2 guy, certainly no lower than 3 based on the body of work. I feel like, again, in terms of comparisons, he really got hurt, as stupid as it is. One thing has nothing to do with another. But the way that Haskins kind of imploded in Washington there, and the whole narrative, and you and I have a Facebook friend, Jason, good old Don Peterson from the Sports Talk Network, who can't let go of the fact that Ohio State's never had a great NFL quarterback. Well, what does that have to do with Justin Fields, though? I mean, and again, Haskins was never a guy. You looked at him where he could run as well as throw. Fields can really kind of do it all. He's been an elite level prospect since before he came to college. He was a high level recruit to Georgia back in the day. And it's a thing where, again, Trevor Lawrence, a lot of people are saying best overall prospect at quarterback since Aaron Luck. I was actually saying that about Darnold a couple of years ago. And like I said, I remain unconvinced that wouldn't have been the case had he gone to an actual NFL franchise instead of the dumpster fire that is the Jets. But again, Trevor Lawrence. So it's showing that even somebody like Sam Darnold could fail if in the wrong circumstance. Trevor Lawrence is somebody that I see as a can't-miss kind of a player. I don't know if that'll be right off the bat or not, but talk about this very fascinating landscape at quarterback, Jason, and where you see the top guys kind of fitting into the fabric of the league.
Well, the interesting thing about quarterback this year specifically, is that, and this happens every now and again, but Trevor Lawrence was penciled in number 1 in 2019.
Yep.
And no one seems to want to waver from that. And if I'm Jacksonville, or at least a fan of Jacksonville, the thing that scares me a little bit about Trevor Lawrence has absolutely nothing to do from the neck down. I mean, if you're just looking at his physical abilities,
sure,
I totally get it. The problem I have with Trevor Lawrence, for lack of a more technical explanation, is his sort of John Elway from California-esque sort of mentality where nothing really phases him. I mean, he doesn't really care about anything. But he's good at football. And there's been some traction, let's say, at the notion that Trevor Lawrence does not need football. Trevor Lawrence could live without football and he'd be fine. And if I'm Jacksonville, did we do all of that just for someone to take 4 bad losing seasons on the chin and walk away? So I do have some concerns, but it's not about his football ability. Then with Zach Wilson, I get it. Everyone's scouting report is basically the same. You wish he was taller, but he's got really good arm talent. Okay, that's fine. But when it comes to Zach Wilson, I'm specifically taken back to this idea, since we're going to circle this back around to Ohio State quarterbacks. I've got a weird sort of Terrell Pryor vibe going on. And that is that Terrell Pryor was fantastic at the things that he was good at. But when you take what he's good at versus what he's not good at, you put it in the NFL, you go, yeah, it's not going to really work for very long. And eventually he's going to have to get better at certain things. So my question with Zach Wilson is, yeah, he can throw it, but what if he ends up on a team, say the Jets, that don't have a great offensive line, and he can't do those little dainty running and throwing little tricks that he's so accustomed to doing. I don't think that's going to work, just like the same reason we think that Lamar Jackson might not play at this level forever because he's not built to do it any other way. So Zach Wilson worries me a little bit, but I get why the Jets are in love with him, and it is the narrative machine at work, and it is what it is. And to Chris's point, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if I'm looking at the top 5 quarterbacks, Zach Wilson might be one of them I'm worried about. I'm not saying he's got bust potential, but I don't know that he's going to be the pedigree quarterback they think he is. That brings us to Justin Fields, who I think should be the second overall quarterback and the second overall pick. But when we talk about the San Francisco thing, I think Shanahan isn't crazy about Jimmy G because Jimmy G fits a certain thing, and I think he wants options. You're not getting options with Mac Jones. But you get Fields in there running that offense, and I can see why you might want to move up to top 3 and get that guy. Trey Lance worries me a little bit. Body of work's part of it. But if it's raw talent and you can build on that, okay. All right, it's quarterback league. You're going to take quarterbacks high. I personally think talent-wise, he's probably 20s and beyond, but I think we're going to see him go in the top 10. And then that brings us finally to Mac Jones, which we kind of touched on. I think if he goes to the right place, he might be moderately successful. But if anybody is watching the draft or fancies themselves an analyst on any level and wants to tell me with a straight face that Mac Jones is one of the more talented quarterbacks in this draft class, I will laugh in their face. So I don't understand that one. There's some value later, but really the game of quarterback here comes down to Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, and Fields. And I think if Trevor Lawrence is in it and they start winning, I think he's going to be fine, and he'll be probably a future Pro Bowl level player. I think Justin Fields will prove in short order, maybe within the first 2 years, to be the guy that should have gone to.
I think so as well. I agree with that. Before we start getting to some of the best players, kind of regardless of position and some of the situations that we're going to be keeping an eye on during the draft, the other position that I want to hit with you guys, because it's very, very, very noteworthy, is wide receiver. Because we're at a point now, going back to 2014, and I've been making the point on the show and making the point also in our draft guide, Pro Football Draftology 2021, that we are in a golden age of top-flight wide receiver talent in the NFL. That 2014 draft and some of the ones subsequently, because I was saying at the time, you have to go back to 96 to really find what was as great of a draft as 2014, and we've kept churning them out. And this year, again, a top-level draft. The 2 guys from Alabama, Devontae Smith, and, of course, Jalen Waddle, Jamar Chase from LSU. Any one of those 3 could be the first wide receiver to go. The next 2 guys, you drop down a little bit, but the next 2 guys, most people would tell you, are both from the Big Ten, whether it be Rashad Bateman of Minnesota or Rondale Moore of Purdue, and you keep going from there. Good depth as you go along in the middle rounds. Certainly a team like the Browns that might be looking for the future at wide receiver when the days of OBJ and Landry, maybe in a year or so, when they may not be paying those contracts anymore. There's a chance for teams to plan for tomorrow with some of the talent, 2nd, 3rd, 4th round, etc. So, Chris, talk about this wide receiver draft, both in the context of the players involved and some of the things that they might be able to do, and then also how it fits into the pattern of the league. We closed the year 2020 at a very, very, very high point of number 1 wide receiver talent in the league, and it's only going to be bigger in 2021.
Well, you've nailed the nail right on the head with your assessment of this class and the overall talent that's being developed at wide receiver. I think you're going to see could be as many as 12 wide receivers in the first 2 rounds.
Wow.
Maybe it's 10, but probably 10 is where I'm putting the over-under, but you could see as many as 12 go in the first 2 rounds. I think there's going to be a real run on them, and there are guys in this draft class that can play, and there's guys all the way down board that can play. You know, you getting all the way down into the 3rd and 4th round for a guy like Anthony Schwartz out of Auburn, who's just an absolute burner, and who can make plays. You know, he's probably going to be a 3rd rounder, is my guess. But you're talking a guy that could play in this league for a long time. You've got guys, North Carolina going in the second round, a guy like De'Ami Brown out of North Carolina. Another one, just huge playmaking ability. Number 3 in his college career behind only, I think it was basically Waddle and Chase in terms of, Smith and Chase in terms of over 20-yard catches. I mean, just a great playmaker. Rondale Moore, blazing fast, 4.3 speed. You worry about health and size with a guy like him out of Purdue. He's injury prone. He's only 5'7", 180 pounds. And I would say the same thing about Devontae Smith. Amazing talent, 6 feet tall, but he's 170 pounds. I worry about that, in terms of his ability to stay healthy in at the next level. But you even got some great mid-major talent. You've got Eskridge out of Western Michigan, who's probably a 3rd or 4th round talent, and could have a really long career. He's a lot like, in my opinion, he's a lot like Rondale Moore, a little undersized, but man, is he 4.3 speed, blazing fast playmaker. And then even a guy that he's going to be in my I really like this kid out of Iowa, who's going to be one of my dark horses, Smith Marset, 6 feet, he's not exactly blazing fast, but he's 4.45 roughly.
Okay.
Underutilized at Iowa, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And I like him as one of these guys you can grab in, I don't know, maybe the 5th or 6th round, who could emerge a lot like Peoples-Jones did with the Browns last year, where it didn't have a great college career in terms of stats, but he's got all the intangibles that you'll love to see. So this is a very deep class, and to your point earlier about some of these position groups, if you need 1 or 2 wide receivers to develop, after the first top 3 or 4 in the class, they're there for the taking.
They are. It's an excellent year to be in that kind of a situation. And Jason, this is just a thing here where there are a number of teams. I know you and I had talked about this off air. That of course the Dolphins being my 1A team, I'm just salivating at being able to get maybe Devontae Smith to be able to pair up with Tua there. I'd also like to see either Etienne or Harris taking that running back. I mean, you could get your triplets in the draft right there to go with Tua. I mean, there are so many teams that could benefit. The Dolphins are just the most obvious one from this deep class of wide receiver. And when people are looking more and more at the explosive nature of this league and that it's routine now to have a 4,000-yard quarterback, and there's almost something wrong if you don't have one that throws for more than that, and the high-octane nature of the league, this is the turbocharging right here. It is the fact that the wide receiver position, dare I say, could maybe be at an all-time high as it is, and you inject these guys into the mix. Wow, it's the league is just going to get more explosive off of what comes off of this draft class at wide receiver.
That was a little creepy just then.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Chris is just reading off my wide receiver positional ranking.
I didn't send him, Jason. I didn't send him. He doesn't have yours.
Everything down to like the rounds you think they're going in was spot on. Now, yes, the league is in a place where you need the ability to get up and get out quickly. And the fastest way to do that is with receivers that can get loose, turn the top off, fight for balls, all that good stuff. The interesting thing here, the 2 at the top that I have essentially 1 and 2 on the receiver board have a unique opportunity to end up going to their college quarterback team.
Right.
Which is interesting. It's not a requirement by any stretch, but hey, you shorten the learning curve. There's probably an established relationship there. Things would probably go smoothly for those 2 guys. And real quick, since you mentioned Devontae Smith, I'm going to say something that is not deeply rooted in analysis. It's just something that I can't unsee when I watch him play.
Okay.
And for some people, they're going to say that's ludicrous, and some people are going to go, wait a minute. Devontae Smith, to me, looks exactly like Randy Moss if Randy Moss was 6'1".
Wow.
which means he has the same concerns coming in that Randy Moss did, and that was, can a guy at 6'4" at 200 pounds really make it? Well, if he's crafty enough and if he knows how to use that frame, he can. And when you watch him, yeah, he's not going to overpower guys. He's not going to push a corner out of the way. But he finds interesting, crafty ways to get the ball and shield it, and so far it hasn't been an issue. Now, as a prospect, am I concerned about 170 pounds? Yes. But he looks legit, and if that at all, in any way, shape, or form pans out, he will be worth the draft pick level that I have him going at. Now, after we leave those two, though, everyone you're looking at has something you love, but they also have something that's not perfectly ideal. So, Waddle is smaller than I'd like him to be, but he's electric. I really like Kadarius Toney out of Florida, but only if you're going into it deciding you're going to utilize him in the kicking game. Bateman's interesting. I mean, you look at him, Minnesota doesn't really impress anybody, but man, he's another one of these guys. I don't know how to say it. He's crafty. He knows that when the ball's in the air, how to position himself to be successful, which is something not all these guys have. Then we start getting down the list. Marquez Stevenson from Houston's another one of these guys that I think is really kind of like a poor man's Tyreek Hill. You look at him, you go, he's fast and shifty, but he also doesn't go down. And then, of course, hey, out of USC, we've got my favorite royal family with another Satan Brown. We'll see if this one pans out. A little bit smaller. But they're like the Grammaticas. I keep waiting for one of them to pan out.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. But then, to Chris's point, after you get out of like the top 10 of these, that's not to say you're out of the running. There's some good talent here.
Right.
You mentioned Eskridge from Western Michigan, Smith Marset from Iowa, Anthony Schwartz was another one that we mentioned. There's a lot in here to like. The question is, do these guys necessarily fit what you're trying to do, or are you trying to put a square peg in a round hole? And I think for the most part, yeah, I've got 13 guys with top 2 round grades. So again, Chris nailing it. I would not be shocked at all if we saw 12 receivers go in the first 2 rounds, because it's that kind of draft. Now, it may not be that the first 15 of those 20-some receivers coming off the board are not all going to be wide receiver ones. They're not going to be your prototype number 1 guy deep threat. But you can get production out of like the top 20 of these wide receivers.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And by the way, just to clarify on that, like I said, I had not sent Chris any of your stuff yet. So suffice it to say, great minds think alike as far as this goes. Also,
no Biden plagiarism here. I have not yet seen Jason's Bible, so
he was not the Neil Kinnock to your Joe Biden, essentially, an obscure 1988 political reference. Look it up, kids. But also, as far as it goes, Jason, just to clarify, as far as the concerns being the same with Devontae Smith and Randy Moss, we do not have any concerns that Devontae Smith was being sold weed by Jason Williams. So just while we're on this here,
like
yes, you're talking about comparison.